All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. This is Filecoin Core Devs call number 46. Today is Thursday, June 30th in the United States, July 1st for some of you. And this is meeting number 2. So today, as always, we're going to quickly run through updates from each implementation team and from the Filecoin Foundation. We're going to briefly touch in on the status of the V16 network upgrade, which is coming very soon, and then check in on the status of our scoping and planning around network version 17. We'll also give space to Mehdi if you'd like to talk about some of the security work you're doing currently. And then Vic will lead us through a FIP presentation for the sector duration multiplier that him and his team have been working on. So, Stephen, you want to kick us off and share Venus's updates with us?
Yeah, sure. Venus team is working on network version 16. In a few weeks, actually, we have done the butterfly network testing and the calibration network testing, and now the Venus team has released one Venus suite, which includes all the components. The Venus version number is 1.6 actually to support network version 16. Now it is released, so the community can take that release to install and upgrade. This is one big thing we have been working on. And the next one is about we have fully functional and which already deployed actually about the Venus market. We fixed a few bugs. Now I think there are a few storage providers are using this one, which is good. And the third thing is about the cool FAM SDK, which is still going on. We have some tools actually to for the user to generate and actually to have some active templates. The user can use this tool to generate this code automatically, so that they could move on with that code to write their logic into that template. One thing is going on is the Venus STM. This we had kicked off I think 2 weeks ago, and we moving on kind of slower slowly because that the whole team is working on the network version 16, and also the blocks. The block team have some vacation actually, so we're moving on this. It's all good, I think. That's all.
Great, thank you, Stephen. So the Lotus teams and Forest teams, Forest unfortunately haven't been able to get their updates in yet, but they will be added before the slides are made available in this week's notes. Both teams are working on final small bug fixes, documentation to support V16. And most interestingly, the Lotus team also just released an updated roadmap for the next couple of, at least the next quarter. So there are a couple of features there, and this one in particular, Split Store, which has a couple of features that community members have been asking for a while, including online garbage collection. It's going to be presented at our next Core Devs call in 2 weeks' time, so look out for that. Otherwise, nothing to report, no issues. And similarly with Filecoin Foundation, not a lot of changes. We have a lot of movement in FIP drafts and also in discussion topics. A lot of this is related to the work that Alex discussed and presented last week, as well as the FIP that Vic is going to walk us through momentarily. But I do want to call out, it's not represented here very clearly, or at all actually, but we do now have a folder for those FRCs that have been discussed over the past couple of weeks. So we have the indexer protocol already merged as our first FRC ever. Boost is going to be in there in the next couple of days, I hope. Their team is sort of finalizing their draft. And as discussed, these are sort of network standards that we'd like to see adopted more broadly, and they exist as drafts for a pretty extended period of time. So as we sort of shore up these changes to the core devs call, formalize things a little bit better, and get a little bit better consensus around who is a core dev and who ought to be attending these meetings, eventually there may come a time when core devs are asked to officially sort of approve those FRCs, but this is pretty far in the future. That being said, nothing immediate that needs to be flagged, but happy to answer any questions anyone may have. Right. And Mehdi, do you want to talk about some of the fuzzing work you're doing or security topics? Anything else you're working on? Yeah.
Thanks, Caitlin. So the reason why I'm jumping on this call is to essentially ask a couple of questions to the various development teams involved with Filecoin. We've been running a whole bunch of fuzzers. We've written about 15 different fuzzers. Each one supports or uses 2 separate fuzzing engines, libafl and libfuzzer. And so we've been collecting a few crashes, started investigating them, but we haven't actually pinned a commit for Lotus and Forest. And we were, tracking the tip of the default branch for both repos, and turned out that at some point our fuzzers started behaving, let's just say, very differently. So my question is, do we know if there's like dedicated branches for the V16 upgrade for these 2 clients? So looking at Lotus, I believe their latest release officially supports V16. However, I'm not entirely sure where Forest is at. So I think, Caitlin, you mentioned that we don't have Forest developers on the call, but perhaps someone here has heard an update from them and could potentially point us in the right direction.
Yeah, we also don't have the Lotus team on this call. They joined the morning one, which I think does not work for your time zone, if I remember correctly. So you're right. You have v1.16 for Lotus, which does support FVM. And then they also have a version 17 release candidate that's going and may be available prior to mainnet upgrades. So both of those may be candidates for fuzzing currently. For Forest, I don't know if it's a final version or a release candidate, but they do have like an active version which exists to support the FVM, obviously. But I can find documentation for you if you need to be pointed to it. But I do not know what that version number is off the top of my head.
That's okay. The latest release that I can see for Forest is from April. So I wasn't too sure if that actually included the V16 support or not. But I can also reach out directly to our ChainSafe friends. I was also wondering whether Venus, because we were thinking of starting integrating Venus, currently supports V16. I can see there's a release from a few days ago, V1.6. So question, is that supporting the latest V16 upgrade?
Yeah. Okay. The Velas support network version 16. Yeah, because so the key thing is that we have we have dedicated engineers follow up all these changes, including the FIP, the discussing and FIP, the whole process, and also some implementation in different parts. Because the Velas architecture is kind of different from the Lotus. So basically, from the spec act point of view, now it's changed to the building actor. So it kind of easier for us. We just adopt that. But for any others, we need to follow up and to have kind of implementation reference, and we need to change beta set, and sometimes we have the FIP by ourselves. For example, the FIP 29, and we will have the first implementation in, and also to have this as a reference, and to have other implementations to follow this one. It's kind of this. So I was saying that this meeting is very important for us, for all of us to discuss, and we need to keep the pace of all this upgrading, implementation, something like this.
Sure. So we'll just target v1.6 for Venus, and I'll chat directly if we have any issues. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to get these points clarified. Apart from that, making good progress. As I said, we've been running these fuzzers quite extensively. As we point them to the relevant commits in the coming days, we'll be able to triage the crashes that we've been seeing, and I'll be reaching out to the various client teams that would need to potentially update their code base with bug fixes. But yeah, we'll get to that.
Thanks, Mehdi. And I think some members of the Forest team may soon be going on vacation. They'll obviously still mostly be around pending the upgrade. But do let me know if you have any difficulty getting in touch with them. You're right that they haven't had like a new version release for quite a few months because they've been working on a lot of the actor structuring and testing. But I want to say that they have made a newer release like in the last couple of days. I could just be wrong. So you want to make sure you get what you need.
Sounds good. Thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah. And sort of unrelated, but Stephen, your point about all of the teams needing to really coordinate around V16 and then future FIPS changes as well. If you find there's a need in the next couple of days to get in touch with teams, we can organize Scrum sessions prior to the upgrade. But Ayush also mentioned this morning that he's going to begin assembling, not a war room, but a V16 party, or Jennifer kept calling it a dance floor, just for anyone who's interested during the actual upgrade epoch to get together and sort of respond to any needs or bugs that arise in real time. So he and I are going to work together to sort of solicit participation in this, and we'd love to have you or anyone else on the Venus team join us. The timing won't be great, but if you're curious or want to, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So yeah, either Slack channel for this or anywhere we could join.
There will be.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I think he and I are going to talk. It's going to be a quick to organize. We're going to either talk tomorrow or Monday, hopefully, and just spin everything up right away. So just be aware that it's happening. But a Slack channel is a pretty light lift, so we can probably just open up one this evening for you to join.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So on that note, no changes, obviously, fortunately, to the Network 16 timeline or plan. Everything should be as everyone expects. And fortunately, with all of the sort of front end testing work that's happened and all of sort of the deep collaboration that's happened for this upgrade, we're all expecting it should be mostly smooth. Don't knock on wood, you don't want to jinx anything, but excited for this to happen next week. Otherwise, as you know, we're already shifting into thinking about Network V17 and thinking of what the scope and timeline for this is going to look like. Here, what we have are the 5 FIPS that seem to make the most sense and to be the highest priority. I know that alongside the FIP 34, which Alex wrote up, Kuba also put in like another sort of like forward compatibility pre-commit fix that will probably be added to this list also. But please know, of course, this list is very, very tentative still. And in order to help us figure out which FIPS to ultimately include and how this is going to help drive our timeline this go around, later this afternoon, I'm going to send around documentation to all of the implementation teams to ask that you begin to sort of model out what requirements you would have for implementation. So you can model this however you'd like. It can be sort of a back of the napkin estimation of resources and requirements. It could be a more detailed sort of like development waterfall if that's helpful to you. But we're going to ask that everyone do familiarize themselves with these steps and do take a look in advance so that there's no surprises down the line, since we did encounter a few in V16 planning. Any questions?
Thanks. I've not really a question, but Jennifer's been on my case to try and get the one more FIP that comes after decoupling Fill+ from the marketplace to do the design work so that we understand what scope that would have as well. It's been my goal to do it this week. I don't think I'm going to succeed. But there is one more potential thing that would come sort of as the final item in that chain of storage market programmability items. So I'll do my best to update the design for that. But it's sort of on the edge of consideration, I would say, at the moment.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, feel free to flag it. I do appreciate how proactive you are with a lot of the documentation you put forth. So it shouldn't be a surprise if it was presented last week, or 2 weeks ago. So we'll let everyone get started with this. And then once you either have that FIP draft or at least just further design details, we can add it to that sort of that planning document and flag it for everyone again.
Yep, sounds great.
Okay, great. All right. Stephen, any questions?
No, actually. So yeah, one thing I just want to mention here is that after the network version 16 upgraded, and we will start to implement the FIP 29. We'll take this actually.
Oh, great.
Very
Yep.
soon.
Perfect. Yeah, I think you had said that last week too. So I'll add that as a note in the docs. All right, cool. So without further ado, Vic, I'm happy to turn it over to you again. Let me make you a host so that you can share your screen. And excited to have you present the FIP that your team has been working on.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Caitlin. So can everyone see this?
Yes, but would you mind opening it up in presenter view? So you hit view and then slideshow.
Definitely.
Thanks.
There we go. Okay, great.
Thanks.
So thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Speaking on behalf of Crypto Econ Lab at the moment, as a quick kind of summary, the idea, Crypto Econ Lab wants to align the behaviors of network participants with one another and the larger vision of the Filecoin network. In doing so, when we introduce kind of new changes or modify existing incentives, we want to make as minimal protocol change as possible. So we want the smallest change service that will have the maximum impact. And we want to present a careful and transparent analysis of potential scenarios of these of these changes. And obviously we want it to be community driven. But currently we see potential for economic improvements given the current state of the network and the current state of the particularly the economics, the macroeconomic conditions of the circulating supply of the economy, coupled with some of the other mechanisms that contribute to the inflationary and deflationary pressures of the utility token. And also we see that there is potential to better incentivize persistent and long-term storage with the introduction of incentives. With that in mind, Juan, Molly, and Crypto Econ Lab has introduced an initial draft of what we think something like this could look like. We posted a discussion a couple of weeks ago, and we did submit a PR in the FIP repo. The biggest caveat here, though, is that this is just a draft. It's very much subject to change. All these parameters and functions are tunable. They should be questioned. We should be talking to the community about this. But what I'm presenting here is kind of our first pass iteration of what we think it could look like following our discussions. So the kind of idea is we want to add a sector duration multiplier for all sectors. This includes both committed capacity as well as sectors containing storage deals. The primary incentive here is we think that there is kind of this incentive missing to align the goal of the network to provide persistent and long-term storage, because miners who commit resources to the network for longer do take on added liquidity risks as well as added operational risks that aren't compensated for. We want to compensate miners for that kind of added risk. And similar to the way that Fill+ kind of rewards and gives you a 10x consensus power for storing useful data, we want to reward storing data for longer. And that is in this sector duration multiplier function. With that, we've also proposed increasing the minimum sector duration time to 1 year and maximum sector duration to 5 years. Again, these are tunable and subject to kind of debate and discussion, but this is our initial draft. And we think this policy should apply at sector upgrade as well as extension. So you can see here that, this equation at the bottom just kind of gives our interpretation of sector quality. Right now, it's determined by the average quality times the sector size. We propose just adding on this extra multiplier that is contingent upon the time at which a sector is committed for. So that's kind of the broad overview. I really want to make sure that we understand that these improvements are very much in the discussion phase. We do think that given the state of the network, that this is an issue of fair importance in terms of time. I think we should align with community consensus, and we shouldn't rush things if there's no need. But we do think that given the current state of the network and the economy, that this is preferably implemented earlier rather than later, pending kind of alignment with all parties. We also are definitely open to considering alternatives to the initial model. We just wanted to present something that things could look like, but there are certainly potentially better solutions out there. But remember, we want to make solutions that have the smallest change surface possible with maximum impact. So that's one of the, that's a constraint that we want to keep in mind, right? There are certainly very complicated manners of kind of achieving something, but if it only has an incremental improvement with a huge added complexity, we prefer to go with something slightly easier to implement. So with that in mind, here are some questions we have for the core devs. We presented some of these questions at the meeting a couple earlier this morning, or on US time, and we got some fairly positive feedback on this. But how difficult would this be to implement? Does this break or interact negatively with existing constructions of the protocol? And as discussed in the meeting one, we kind of came to this loose idea that we would like community alignment by end of July. If we were to want to kind of include this in the V17 upgrade. That's why we're having another meeting. That's all. There's another discussion to be had here. But happy to answer any questions. But yeah, the floor is now open to ask whatever. Caitlin, thank you for putting the links into the discussions as well as the PR.
Oh, you are most welcome. I can also summarize broadly what we discussed this morning. Obviously, Alex or Stephen, your perspective and knowledge about this is deeper than mine, but this is not something that in terms of work or team capacities would be that difficult to implement. This is much more difficult as a governance issue because, again, the code is pretty straightforward. What's difficult is sort of the business change that's here. And what we do see is some early conversation among smaller storage providers who are concerned that this creates an unfair collateral requirement, and that this would tilt the network further towards large scale storage providers only, which is, people have different perspectives on what this means for network decentralization. I think Vic, you made a great point to say that this is a small incentive. It doesn't change the business logic at current scale, and that's important for people to keep in mind. But I want to note also that you said your team is also working on some behavioral modeling that will help community members also understand what the presumed impact of a change like this will be, and that will be available next week, which I think will be really helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Caitlin. We would like to continue the discussion specifically in the posted space where we want to provide our responses to some of these questions for sure.
Yeah, and you and I should talk offline too about coming up with an action plan for how to sort of solicit more feedback on this, which is something that I am employed to do, but I'm also very helpful to tag team it with you.
Sounds good.
Yep. Yeah. Any other?
Yeah, obviously, important points here we'll go and raise in written form as well. but my impression is this is going to interact with a few existing constructions of the protocol, mainly because when the reward for a sector increases, that changes its initial pledge, and that pledge is used as an input to lots of calculations. In particular, everything to do with penalties ends up being produced out of this as well. But the magnitude of a penalty is not usually related to sometimes is related to the duration of the commitment, and sometimes is not related to the duration of the commitment, and so they need to be recalculated to understand that. And then the risk of penalty through operational failure, even to your well-behaved minor operators, they still fail sometimes, and so then their your expected return calculations need to factor in larger penalties if penalties get bigger. Depending. So I think there is a set of interactions there that will need analysis.
When you say we'll need analysis, do you mean from like the perspective of how this affects the crypto economics, like, or from the perspective of how this would be implemented given the constructions of initial pledge and how we spec out slashing, just so I understand this from my end.
I'm not saying the implementation is going to be particularly difficult, except for the fact that we may have to change the implementation of a bunch of penalty things, because the naive, like just take the pledge as it is now, might produce the wrong result.
Okay, I understand. Got it.
They'll still be straightforward. It's all analytical problem. The actual code will be easy.
Okay, got it.
A second point I might raise, I'm very pleased to see in your first slide, this your goal of careful and transparent analysis of the potential scenarios. Obviously, we haven't seen that yet. I think that's probably the reason for a large amount of community concern is that I think there's a perception that you've thought about it a lot, but you haven't shared any of that thinking with us. And so I heard Caitlin refer to the fact that there's going to be hopefully some stuff coming out next week. But then to sort of address I think the biggest thing right now to answer the question about like what would we need to see this ratified for the next network upgrade is like, well, step one will be that analysis. The community can't really engage in the discussion yet until we have that. I mean, obviously, you're really interested parties could go and try and redo that analysis, but that's probably a waste of time because we trust you've probably done a good job of it. The discussion can't really start in earnest about trade-offs and values until we see that.
Yeah, that's entirely fair. I think that we wanted to make sure that internally we agreed on the analysis itself, and we were fairly careful about these assumptions, just because of the sensitivity of kind of just throwing out crypto economic assumptions without a strong basis that's fairly robust and something that we're confident in, which is why we've been working over we've taken in a lot of the community feedback that's come in last week and this week. We've been kind of refining and working on our models to answer them as transparently as possible, and we want to get this out next week. We want to share like these kind of this scenario analysis that we think will actually help the community have a more fruitful discussion.
Yeah, thanks. I'm very much pleased that you started the discussion sooner. It would be an anti-pattern, I think, to have not even produced anything until after you'd done all of the analysis, and then we're sort of even more locked into the convinced that your own ideas were correct, and then published it. That would be worse pattern than the current one, even though the current one feels like you get pushback because you don't have all the answers straight away. It's actually much better than the pushback you'd get if you thought you did have all the answers, but without involving community at all.
Definitely.
I fully concur.
Great.
Because of the way we design this consensus and how soft it effectively is, it's really important that you have been so proactive in sort of sharing these things early on, because it helps us sort of craft a more desirable outcome one way or the other, rather than just having to decide yes or no on something that just popped up all of a sudden, fully formed.
Yeah.
Love transparency.
I have to come.
What's up? Hi, Stephen.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I have two comments here. Yeah, and I also mentioned last time I mentioned one in the comments in the discussion here. Yeah, the first thing is that I was saying that okay, in this meeting, because this meeting we have, we call it co-dev meeting, so we have the implementers here. So from the implementation point of view, I would think that's one thing, right? So we could collect some opinions or feedbacks from designers. But on the other hand, we need to get some feedbacks from other community members. For example, we could collect some feedbacks from the storage provider working group or some other clients, including the enterprise clients. It's because one thing is that this may increase the cost of the storage actually. The service. So I think that could you to consider. So it's about the governance, and we need to get more feedback from different different community members. Okay, this is one thing. Another thing, okay, basically, I agree that we need to encourage the storage providers to save the data longer and to keep the network stable. But at the same time, in principle, the initial pledge collateral is is for the service. Is for the service quality, is to guarantee the service could be fulfilled, right? So I would like to think from the service point of view, which means that our vision is to provide the secure and also cheaper storage for our clients. So we need to be very careful to design this kind of thing, while we encourage people, the storage providers to store data longer, have a longer duration sector, but at the same time we need to think about to keep keep it cheaper, keep it actually affordable for our clients or the storage providers. So I would think that if current amount of initial pledge is secure, could guarantee, is because we have the parallelity, right? We have the collateral and parallel to guarantee or to make sure that the service is stable. So we should maybe keep this stable, right? If it is secure. So I was thinking that if we have this SDM introduced, we need to design this function and try to keep the average initial pledge at the same level. If that is not secure, if we think the initial pledge is not enough, we need to increase it. Basically, we'll come back to think about the principle, which is actually designed for the service.
So if I understand this correctly, to clarify, I think the intention of the FIP is to increase the consensus power for longer deals, but that would require a higher collateral requirement as well, which I think maybe answers your question. Maybe it does not, but
that is because
like similar to how, for example, similar to how FIL plus deals require 10x collateral, that the collateral increase for a longer sector would be proportional with relation to their increased consensus power. Maybe I didn't make that clear. Sorry about that, but that is the intended goal of this FIP is to also increase that consensus collateral requirement.
Right. Yeah. If
Stephen
Yeah.
raises a really good point. Like if some sectors with long commitments, they gain more consensus power, and so they require initial pledge, a large pledge, does the pledge of other sectors decrease correspondingly because they have less consensus power because it's a fixed size pie?
I see. If initial pledge is a function of your expected block reward as well as your QAP. So with relation to other sectors, yes, their initial pledges would be lower, but they would also, share in less of the rewards commensurately, right?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I guess one of the bits of analysis is like, what's the effect on the total initial pledge lockup? I think Stephen's point is like the total pledge right now, we believe is sufficient to secure the quality of service. There is a justification for increasing the pledge on a per sector basis for the higher consensus power. If this affects the total amount of pledge, what's the justification for that? I don't know if it does affect the total pledge.
Yeah, that's something that we are working on and are happy to share. I think the intuition is that it would kind of have an effect on the total amount of initial pledge locked. But remember that we are also kind of giving out more rewards because we've introduced this idea that we economically prefer certain sectors that are longer over others because of the value that they have or present to the network. But yeah, I think that's one of the pieces of analysis that we think should be part of the discussion, which we will share coming next week.
Yeah, it would be great to Stephen, after that analysis is shared, to sort of get your thoughts and feedback on it and whether it addresses your concerns, or if you have a particular opinion one way or another about the potential impact of the FIP.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So
Stephen,
yeah.
Stephen, another thing I heard, just to make sure I got it right, was I think we've talked a lot about the supply side economics, i.e. like what it would cost for storage providers and with their initial pledge and stuff, but you also mentioned stuff from the client side with regards to potentially data costing more. I think you said something along those lines. Did I mishear that? Okay. I think the initial response that I would give is data is fairly free now, given the Phil Plus kind of program. So I don't anticipate that this would have an adverse effect on something like Phil Plus, just because they're like not exactly orthogonal, but they're fairly kind of independent, and so those incentives still exist for data to not kind of cost more. But maybe I'm missing something here. Feel free to like put your thoughts in the discussion as well, but we can continue the discussion here. I'm happy to do it either way. But
yeah, okay. Basically, yeah, we can discuss more offline. If we increase the initial pledge, actually the capital cost is higher for the storage provider to save the same amount of data. You have a multiple for that you will have if we request more initial pledge, even we save longer, but actually the cost is higher because you need to have more.
Okay, right. So you're saying that SP costs and so the increase in SP costs might drive up cost of data. I think I understand your point. Okay, cool. That's an interesting point. Thanks.
All right. So it sounds like for us, next step are to wait for Vic and the team to prepare their analysis and make it public so that we can all sort of continue the discussion. Vic, you and I should also connect offline again about sort of continuing to share word of this FIP. So at the storage provider working group meetings that Stephen mentioned and other places also. just so we stay on top of this July timeline, which summers always fly by. And this one in particular, as we move from one network upgrade into another, we want to make sure that we stay on top of this should it be adopted for inclusion. But I do think, to the conversation we had 10 minutes ago, this should also be on the list of FIPS that we ask implementers to begin to sort of model implementation pathways for, just so there's no surprises and so that we can call attention to it. I know you presented to the Forest team this morning. I think the Lotus team had to drop off, but it's important that they stay involved, especially as all of our FIP discussions are so central to our upgrade planning.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Then I think that brings us to the end of our meeting, unless anyone has anything else they'd like to bring up. All right. One final note then, other than the implementation modeling documents, I'm also going to send around a change management plan. You do not have to look at it, but it will be shared with implementers if you'd like to, for changing the format of the core devs call. The plan will have us having one more meeting like this right after the network upgrade, and then moving beginning in August to that new monthly, much more formalized format. So be on the lookout for that. Shouldn't be any surprises, but if you'd like to weigh in, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we will see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Right.